Okay, so my name is David, as Latifat said. I work with Borbia, the Irish Food Board, which are the semi-state body set up for the promotion of Irish food both in Ireland and overseas. Within that, I work on the consumer insight team, and our process is all around bringing Irish food and drink products to market and creating their brands. So it's all about growth through consumer understanding. And today I'll be talking to you about the route to developing your brand and the pack design, so the brief. And I'm not sure if there's many, I know Latifat said that there was lots of food and drink companies involved in this. I'm not sure, is there anyone here today that's involved with food, or just, no? Well, it doesn't matter, because it is hugely relevant to everyone. You are, okay, perfect. It is hugely relevant across the board. It's not just for food and drink companies. So what I'm going to be talking about today is the importance of the process and the importance of the work that we do, the importance of packaging and what your packaging has to do on shelf, the key stages to the packaging design and development, focusing in on the brief. So how do you get that brief ready to go into a design agency so that they can communicate all of the key aspects of your brand and the core competencies? The how-to case study, so I'll give you an example of a company that we have worked with, and then some examples of brands from around the world that have nailed it and done a very good job of it. So we get a lot of companies coming to us saying, I need to develop a brand ASAP, and in reality, that cannot be the case. We need to stop them right there. It's a long process, and you need to start from the beginning and get it right at the beginning so that when you bring it to market, it is successful. And why is that? If you think about your local supermarket, there are over 50,000 SKUs in it. If you think about the basket, the average basket has about 30 items in it. You have to remember, why is that consumer going to pick up your product over the 40,000 odd other products and fill in their basket? And also, innovation is tricky business. It's not a case of anyone can do it. If it was that case, then everyone would do it. And we've seen from a journal of food science, 72 to 88% of all new food products fail launched in Ireland in 2012. And the truth hurts, unfortunately, if your product is not different or better or cheaper than, like these 3 chocolate examples here, you won't go too far. So we see that the Me Too products are the leading cause of product failures. And if your product does not have something that has a USP or a competitive advantage over competitors, it won't be on the market for longer than a year. And that's why in Borbia we are focused on the customer. Everything we do has the consumer at the heart of it. So why is packaging so important? So when you think about it, your package has to do an awful lot. It has to do an awful lot around functionality. So it needs to protect your product, especially in food and drink. Outside of that, it needs to be something that communicates the core benefits, all of those other aspects that needs to be on that tiny little pack on shelf. An example of a brand that has relaunched, Philadelphia Simply Stir, which is quite successful, obviously, in the way that it's functional and it has a lot of benefits for the consumer, so it is selling quite well. Robinson's Squash, so I'm not sure if you're familiar with this. It's a 66 milliliter tub that basically you can bring around in your back pocket, and it has the same benefits of a 2-liter bottle. And along with all of the benefits it brings for being a great product, it also saves on food miles and it's more eco-friendly. It's also all about technicality, and if you think about the consumer of today, they're very loud. If something doesn't work properly, they're going to be shouting about it online. And Chobani learned that the hard way about, I think was it last year, the year before last, when the product was not protected right on shelf. This vicious bacteria got in and it actually caused some explosions in supermarkets in the States, and they had to take it from the shelf. If you think of a ready-made meal, it has to communicate an awful lot on usually what is quite a small pack. So technicality is really important there about keeping the product fresh and also communicating what the ingredients are and stuff like that and how to prepare it. It's also a way for your product to stand out on shelf. So it really is that eye-catching element of a product is so important. And when you think of the likes of Goo and on the dessert aisle in your local supermarket, that really has that standout colour, and it's something that you can instantly recognise. Glenillan Farm is a great example of an Irish food product which is manufactured in County Cork that has all the benefits, and they're all about the authentic, real taste. And it's also about brand building. So what I'm going to take you through now is the journey that we use in Borbia to help Irish food and drink companies develop their brands. So this is our 7-step process. And as you can see, I'll be going through different examples of this and jumping in and out of a case study to bring it to life for you. The first 3 stages here are very much probably where most of you are at the minute. So it's all around the groundwork and the market research stage. Then we move on up here to stage 2, exploring. So kind of looking at the category dynamics and trying to identify what is important within your category. We then refine that and look at the viability of the product. So that's consumer viability and also technical viability that it will sell basically. That all of this work then leads into building your brand. So we take all of those, map them out, and then that feeds into your design brief, which is stage 6, expression. And that's all about how your pack is going to look on shelf, how your communications are going to look, and how your brand is going to sound. So basically the personality of your brand. And then the final stage, well, the last stage in this process is the launching stage, but there's also a stage beyond that which is all about monitoring because things change all of the time. So the pack design comes last really. So you start with your desk research, and this is the most important stage of any of the process because this is where you need to identify what the category looks like and basically where you're going to go and how you're going to differentiate yourself. So building the market context is critical, and it's all around looking at who are the key players, identifying who your biggest competition is going to be, what is their share, who is in growth and who is in decline, so you can identify who's doing what and who's doing what correctly and incorrectly, and then look at their price points so that you can actually compete with them. And embracing trends. So within Borbia, this is also freely available to everyone and is very relevant. We have our Consumer Lifestyle Trends program, which is being launched this Thursday with a microsite and a full kind of presentation. It's a research that was conducted in 27 markets globally with 28,000 respondents. So it's a very robust study. And it's 6 key typologies that consumers are living their lives. And then these are the 5 Ws. So if you want to identify who your customer is, what are they consuming, where are they consuming it, when and why they're consuming it. And that's something that'll actually just put it into context for you so you can understand exactly what you're going to do and what's going to be different. And we will be sharing with these slides with you afterwards, so you're more than welcome to, you can take pictures if you want, but we'll send them on to you as well. So once you understand your competitors and your key point of difference, you are close to understanding where to position yourself. And then this is the market map tool. So we would use this to kind of identify where you are on the kind of horizontal axis and the vertical axis, looking at, are you premium, are you all about value, are you all about artisan, mass produced? So it's kind of looking at that so you can identify where you sit on that map in comparison to your competitors. And you also need to look at what problem does your product solve. So how would consumers describe your product? What does it offer on a functional level and on an emotional level? Because the consumer interacts with your product both rationally and emotionally. So if you think of Dyson vacuum cleaners, they're all about kind of vacuum cleaners that don't clog. That's how they've positioned themselves and that's how they've differentiated themselves. And it's also useful to kind of think about your consumer and put them in the middle of their whole world. Think about what do they think and feel, what do they see, what's important to them, what do they say and do, and what do they hear, and that just kind of puts everything into context so you can actually start imagining what your consumer looks like and getting to live in their world. And the initial size of price estimate, so the whole kind of, with a good understanding of your market and your competitive set, you'll be in more of a position to explore the size of the opportunity and test whether is this actually a viable idea. So back on the journey review then, we've looked at groundwork, the exploring stage and refining, and now we're going to be looking at the viability stage. So this is really when you have all that lead up work done, this is where you need to identify, is this something that has scale? Is this something I can actually make money on? Should I stay or should I go? So the next stage then is all about building your brand, and actually I think this is where the video is. Yeah, so this is just a quick video about insight and what's
Most companies and people involved in marketing and innovation believe they use insights. They refer to being insight-driven and consumer-focused. But what is an insight, and how do we know if we've got a good one? Well, that is the $64,000 question. It is clear that not everyone uses insights properly, and some people and organisations are clearly better at recognising them than others. But how do we find these great insights and capture them for our organisation? Well, firstly, we have to recognise what is a real insight and what isn't. An insight consists of the 3 W's. What is the customer doing? Why are they doing it? And wow, no one has ever noticed or talked in such detail about that problem before. If we know what people are doing but not why they are doing it, we call this an observation. It's not an insight as we can't be sure of the motivation behind the action. Interesting observations, though, are a great basis for generating insights, but they can only be laddered up to insights by asking further questions of consumers and customers. People also often mistake accepted consumer beliefs for insights. These are myths and prejudices mainly created by the industry which influence consumer purchase and prevent them getting what they really need. Again, we need to ladder up from ACBs to insights by asking our consumer further questions. When looking for insights, it's vital to focus your activity, narrow your research to specific targets and to key gaps in your knowledge. We have tools to help you.
So I think that gives a good overview of what is an insight. So you might have the data behind it, but you need to actually go out there and ask your consumers, well, why is that? Why do 70% of people brush their teeth with cold water? So again, brands as well are all about creating a relationship. So you need a personification in order to kind of interact with your consumer. When people buy into a brand, they're buying into a relationship. Good brands have differentiated themselves, and in developing your positioning, you're identifying how your brand will be perceived in a given scenario. And then that's where we again revisit the 5 Ws. So after all of that work has been done, you've gone out there and you've met your consumer, let's map it out again and kind of track where are the changes and what has changed since we initially done the work. Then the brand personality. This is really about identifying a kind of a person. A lot of people would maybe use celebrities or people that they know in order to identify who their brand is. How would it dress and act? What characteristics would it have? So it really is about kind of giving it life so you can actually interact with it yourself. And also building your brand promise. And if you think about certain brands, I'm sure there's plenty of brands in this room as we speak. What is different about them and what is their benefit in their category? And then it's all about getting to the core of your brand. So at this stage, you need to check your essence. It needs to be relevant to your end consumer after doing the 5 Ws. It needs to be credible, unique, have standout, and it also needs to be sustainable as well. It can't be something that's relevant today and tomorrow, and then in 5 years' time, it's no longer important. And when we think again, I know I'm going back to Glenillan Farm, it is all around their brand promise is authentic farmhouse yogurt. On shelf, they stand out because they're nice little pots and stuff like that. So they've got that stage 100% correct, and it's a brand that we would have worked with. Brennan's Bread, it's all about today's bread today. We didn't work on this, but they've still developed a very strong core competency within their brand. So, and at last, this is the design part. So this is where you've basically all of the work done. You now need to compile that into a design brief and go to an agency. So there's no such thing as a poor creative work. Well, maybe there is, but usually it's as a result of a poor brief. So you really need to, I've seen companies come to us where they've gone straight to a design agency, they've given them a brief over the telephone, they haven't done any work. They end up costing a lot of money. It's not cheap, it's very expensive business. And they can charge much more than €500 an hour in comparison to the legal world. I've seen crazy bills come in. So the importance of a brief is that your expectations for your pack design are more likely to be met if you've put it down on paper to communicate exactly what you need. It avoids the cost of rebriefing. An agency will charge you every time you pick up the telephone to contact them. It's embedded in consumer understanding, and it's also embedded in the brand strategy, which facilitates your brand story, which you've done all of this work to create. And it also helps to focus the mind, because it is quite a lengthy process, and it just brings you back to, actually, this is the stage I'm at, so you can go forward with it. And the design brief is right here at the core of everything. So it's being influenced by the macro drivers of change in the environment, your global consumer trends, the consumer demand and behaviours, your competitive environment, and then within that, your organisation. So be it a huge organisation or a one-person job, it's the same principle apply. The packaging brief then will look something like this. So under each heading, you're mapping out what should be included in order for you to get what you want off your design agency. So the detail is really in a brief overview and context. What objectives are you trying to meet with this? Your target consumer, and what we often do is we include a pen portrait. So go online, get a picture of a customer that you think fits the bill, describe them, describe how they think and feel, describe brands that they currently interact with, and that just kind of brings it to life yet again. Your brand essence and brand promise and proof points, so that's very important on that brand map that we shared with you earlier on. Your brand personality, the tone of voice and visual style, and these are all mandatories of the brief, but actually some things that can be add a lot of value, which we would include in all of our barista agencies, is the short history of your brand evolution, where have you come from, your mission statement, kind of where your ambitions are for the brand, current developments like new products, new ranges. That's important for the design agency, not to develop one pack that might not suit if you have a new product coming onto the market in 6 months' time. Consumer research, sample taste trials, competitive products, and what other brands you aspire to, which is a nice add-on that you can kind of say, well, this is who I want to be in 10 years' time or whatever. And it is all around thinking about the long term. When you think of, I'm not sure if you guys are relevant with the Saucy Fish Company, but they had a lot of data which said people like cooking fish and they like cooking from scratch, but actually when it comes to raw fish, they don't like touching the product. So that was, the insight was basically, I like cooking, but don't feel confident about cooking raw fish. They came on the market with a solution which was exactly what it says on the pack almost. You take it off on the tray, bang it in the oven, and in 10 minutes time you've perfect fish. The outcome for them was €12 million worth of sales in year one, so it was very promising, and that's in Ireland and UK. And there are some principles that you can see across the range of all packs. Colour strength, if you think the likes of Walker's Sensations, Cadbury's Chocolate, they own two very distinct colours that on shelf stand out and across all of their communications. Some distinct shapes overall within the graphics, your logo personality, it needs to be ownable and consistent. The choice of imagery, product or story enhancing, and this isn't necessarily just a product shot. It can be, for example, on the Sensations pack there, it's not a picture of Chris, it's a picture of chilies. Supporting words, and if necessary, which are supportable and readable. Sometimes a lot of this content can go online, which is a follow-on piece. You don't need to put everything on your pack because it might just be secondary information. And it doesn't necessarily have to be what you love. If you think of this product, it's hugely successful, manufactured in Ireland. But when you look at it, it's not those are not the cues that you get from it whatsoever. But they have quite a sizable business. So to bring that all to life for you, we just have a case study which I'm going to go through quickly because I'm probably quite pushed for time at the minute. So Fresh Cut Services are a brand which came to us. They're Irish manufacturers. They didn't have a consumer-facing brand. They were all sold into food service and retail. A lot of deli counters. They do fresh pies, ready-made meals, and that kind of stuff. The product challenge that they came to us with was they wanted to develop a brand proposition and identity for consumers within supermarkets for their chilled pie offering. So we started this stage with the groundwork phase. So we looked at the chilled category and we identified that within this chilled category there's a lot of kind of ready-made meal solutions out there, but none of them are doing it very well. They're doing it kind of on a much kind of lower scale. It's not very premium, apart from some of the own label store brand, Tesco Finest, for example, those type ones. So when we went onto that, building the brand, we went out and we talked to consumers and we looked at, to win in pies, you need to have lots of veg and hidden veg. So it appeals to mums, it's affordable, provenance, you need to be able to see the food. And it was really all around, there was less air in the pie and it was deep fill. So the core insight then was all about having lots of real food inside. We then mapped out the 5 Ws, looked at who their target consumer was, what they were consuming and where they were consuming it, and then also when and why. So when we looked at that then, the core of the brand that we developed up was all about goodness from the inside. It was natural, hearty, wholesome and trust on a primary level. And then secondary, it was all around the experience, the quality, the trust, and that this company, who have obviously been making pies for years, but they just didn't sell directly to consumers. So the brand promise, therefore, was mocked up as being wholesome recipes from a home-cooked chef, a real food pie. And I'm sure this is the third stage most of you are probably familiar with. We've done consumer groups as well. We would have done 6 consumer groups developing it up. That's just going through the stage 3. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Donald Skehan. It's his parents' company. So the brand that was mocked up, which is doing incredibly well, is Scoff Pies. And then beyond that, we've also gone into the 5th stage, which is monitoring the brand. So it's on shelf about a year and a half now, and it's doing incredibly well. They've got a lot of follow-on piece. Love in Dublin, which I know most of you are probably aware as well, done a piece on, it was the only time they've ever done a piece away from a restaurant or food service. It was on a supermarket product, so it was just very positive and interesting, and the guys were delighted with that. So it is all about getting it right. Some of these brands are just examples of products that have done so. This is Festina watches, obviously outside of food and drink, so maybe relevant to some more of you guys. Their raison d'etre is all about engineered for water. So when you buy the product, it's actually stored in a water pouch, kind of like a goldfish bag that you buy. So it's just kind of neat, like that kind of gets the core brand competency out. Water in a box, so this plays up to the consumers who don't like plastic bottles. So the water in the box is obviously more sustainable and eco-friendly, and it's quite a nice pack. It would definitely stand out on shelf. The clever little bag from Puma was a way of cutting down waste as well. So it was around sustainability, and what used to be 2 different items of packaging now is just one. It's just a handle on a shoebox. And then Doritos, which is quite a simple product. They don't have anything on front of pack beyond the flavour, the colour and the logo. It's instantly recognisable. If you want some of the follow-on pieces, you can go onto their website or onto their Facebook pages. And then this is Le Occitan, I think, is that the right way of pronouncing it? Soaps, which is just a refillable bottle that you can put, you can bring home and fill up your soap bottle in your bathroom or whatever, cutting again down on waste. So some of the key takeaways for today, it's really about taking time to get your brand right and get to know the core of your brand, basically. You need to understand your consumer, and it's all about getting out there. And it's quite simple to do, actually. You can go online on Facebook, on Tumblr, and you can just get to know your consumer for quite a cheap, like it's not an expensive cost whatsoever. You need to understand your market, looking at the category broadly. Spend a lot of time doing your groundwork. I see a lot of people that skim over this part, don't see it as important. It's the most critical part and feeds into all other areas of the process. Understand your positioning, your key benefits, spend time getting your brief right, and don't brief your agency until you have your brief 100% correctly so you can cut down on waste. Use the 5 Ws on an ongoing basis. So that's something that you can use even if you're not rebranding or redesigning. It's a great way of understanding your consumer, and never stop. It's a cyclical process. It's a full circle. So thank you very much for listening.